Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. Weekend is here, so let's get into Saturday's big news stories. And let's start off once again with the story that everyone has been talking about this week, and that is the Monday Night Raw record low ratings, because now we have an update when it comes to the USA Network side of things. Obviously, Raw's episode of Monday Night Raw was the lowest ever rated episode of the Red brand on the USA Network, or just in general, to be frank. And then we've had these stories throughout the week that WWE officials were shocked and upset, and then WWE officials get the message, they understand what this means, and reactionary changes are coming soon. But also, now we have an update when it comes to the USA Network side of things as to their opinion on the matter, and it isn't good for WWE there as well. Now, USA Network's officials are reportedly upset with the recent WWE Monday Night Raw ratings. As was previously reported widely, Monday's TLC Go Home edition of Monday Night Raw drew an average of 1.527 million live viewers. Of course, this was down 12% from last week's 1.737 million viewers. Now, Monday's show drew an all-time low in total viewership, a new all-time low in viewership for every single hour of the 3-hour show, and a new all-time low in the key demographic, that being the 18 to 49. Furthermore, last week's episode of AEW Dynamite, not this week's episode because that was down as well, but last week's episode of AEW Dynamite on TNT drew a 0.45 rating in the key demographic, which of course is the 18 to 49 demographic, which beat every single hour of this week's episode of Monday Night Raw in that same key demographic. So in an update from this, it looks like the WWE officials are not the only ones who had a very big and negative reaction to this week's record low numbers, as there was a similar reaction at the USA Network. This is according to a report from Alex McCarthy over there at TalkSport. Now, it was noted in this report that USA Network management is furious with the drop in ratings, and they want more dark and violent content to be featured on Monday Night Raw going forward. This is what the source said to Alex McCarthy. It said, quote, USA Network are furious. They want more adult content, not sexy adult, but dark and violent adult. That's according to the source talking to Alex McCarthy. It was also said that WWE officials are hoping that the 2021 Royal Rumble pay-per-view can serve as some kind of, quote, big reset for the company. This new report comes after it was reported earlier this week via Wrestling Observer Radio that the low numbers are a wake-up call for WWE. Dave Meltzer noted that everyone he knows in WWE was stunned by these numbers, and that people, quote, got the message inside WWE. It was also reported via WrestleVotes that the record low numbers for Monday Night Raw were not sitting well with the WWE higher-ups, and people in the company expected some, quote, reactionary decisions to be made, but of course no other details were provided. This is very interesting. What's interesting is kind of every single report that's coming out this week from a variety of sources, whether it's Alex McCarthy, Dave Meltzer, WrestleVotes, whoever, they're all kind of saying the same thing. No one's happy with what Monday Night Raw is doing in terms of viewership. The interesting thing, I think, is probably the most interesting thing, is this latest report when it comes to the USA Network, that they're not happy, because truly they are the ones that can actually put a bit of pressure on WWE in terms of making significant changes to Monday Night Raw. What I will say is USA Network not being happy is slightly laughable, because they're part of the problem. USA Network is part of the problem when it comes to Monday Night Raw. USA Network pays WWE very, very handsomely for that third hour. That is just a absolute death sentence, a death nail in the Monday Night Raw coffin. USA Network is part of the problem. So for them to be angry that the ratings are down, for them to be angry that the numbers aren't good for WWE and Monday Night Raw on the USA Network, they're part of the problem. That's like the people that sell matches to an arsonist being upset that the house is burning down. Well, you gave them the match in the first place. You're part of the problem. USA Network, I've said this over and over again, but they are part of the problem because they paid WWE so much for that final third hour. Why did they do that? Because any other content that they would have in that final third hour wouldn't draw the rating that WWE does. Now, the rating isn't good in that third hour for the standards of Monday Night Raw and WWE, but it's better than anything else USA Network would put on during that time period. So they're happy with that third hour number. They're just not happy with Monday Night Raw in general. But again, USA Network, you're part of the problem. You're giving WWE the money to do that third hour. You're giving WWE the money to do this format that isn't working. And to not be happy now, I'm shocked. I'm stunned that the numbers have gone down. I can't believe it. Again, you're part of the problem. So whilst it's encouraging that USA Network are saying that they're not happy and they want more edgy and adult material, whether or not we get that, I don't know. At this point, I have heard this story, and I have heard this rationale, and I have heard this report 100 different times, 100 million different times over the years. WWE's not happy with the ratings for Raw. WWE gets the message when it comes to Monday Night Raw. Changes are coming. We're going to give you what we want. USA Network are not happy. They're telling WWE to do this. USA Network, right? They were the ones behind the 24/7 Championship and the Raw reunion specials and maybe old school Raw as well. That was all USA Network's decision. But in the grand scheme of things, what did it change? Nothing really fundamentally changed about Monday Night Raw. That's the problem with Monday Night Raw. It is essentially the same program as it was at the height of its popularity in 2000 to what it is now 20 years later. It is exactly the same, but worse. But worse, it's a bad TV show. It's a 3-hour TV show that is bad. It is so difficult to watch. It is not must-see TV. The only thing raw and edgy about it is its name. It's called Monday Night Raw. The reason it was called Monday Night Raw way back when in 1993, because it was live and it was edgy, it was raw, it was uncut. The only thing raw about Monday nights right now is its name. Nothing else about that show is raw or edgy or anything like that. And when it comes to edgier content and more adult-orientated, dark, gritty content, will that save Monday Night Raw? Again, I mentioned this before. I really don't know at this point. Is a creative idea, is a hot angle, is a hot storyline going to save Monday Night Raw? I don't think it is. I don't think it is. Fundamentally, there are far bigger issues when it comes to Monday Night Raw than just creative. It's not just a creative problem. It's a format problem. It's how they shoot TV. It's how the setup is of Raw. If you tuned in 5 years ago and you tune in now, there is no difference. Of course, at the moment, there's no fans in the Thunderdome, but if this was a normal time, there is no difference, apart from the cast of characters. Nothing has changed about Raw. There's been no evolution in Monday nights. Apart from it's got worse. The evolution is that it's gone downhill. That's a great evolution for Monday nights. You need to change stuff more fundamentally. Move it back to 2 hours. Shoot the TV differently. Have a multicam setup when you do your backstage segments. Do a different kind of entrance ramp and Titantron, you know. Have the entrance come through the crowd or something like that. Or just have the hard cam on a different direction. Make it feel like a different show. It doesn't feel different. There is nothing different about Monday Night Raw in the last 20 years apart from it's got 1 extra hour and it's more boring than ever. It's less must-see TV. So USA Network can be furious, and maybe we might get this more adult, edgier content, but how many times have we seen things more edgy and adult in this PG era when it's Raw Underground was meant to be gritty and then it disappeared after 10 weeks. Paul Heyman was meant to be the executive director of Raw to bring that edginess and grittiness and elevate new younger stars, and he was gone after a few months as well. And it's quite funny that USA Network wants this edgier and grittier content when someone like Paul Heyman would have been a good advocate of that and someone that at least has a history of writing that kind of pro wrestling. But WWE didn't like the numbers that he was getting. He's gone, and they've got worse because it is a sinking ship. Fundamentally, the problems are way bigger than ideas, who's in charge of creative, all that kind of stuff. They are far deeper than that. So USA Network can be unhappy, and WWE can say they get the message, and there are going to be some reactionary changes. We could have a title switch tomorrow at TLC, or this idea we're going to see a big reset for Monday Night Raw when it comes to the Royal Rumble. I'll believe it when I see it, and to be honest, I highly doubt I'll see it. I highly doubt I'll see it. And I'm not saying this as someone just to poo-poo all over WWE. I'm saying this as a pro wrestling fan that's watched WWE at this point for over 20 years. I've heard it all before. We all have heard it before. These reports come out and we hear it time and time again. Creative is going to change. We're going to get more edgy material. We're going to go back to the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era, fundamentally as well, yes, it had great moments. Some of the shows were pretty bad too. But it felt like an edgier show, a show that was live and was raw, and just, it was must-see TV. Even if it wasn't great, it was must-see TV. There is nothing must-see about Monday Night Raw right now, and just WWE for that matter as well. So it's an interesting report, and people might get excited that USA are saying we want more adult-orientated material and all that kind of stuff. Will that bring people back? There are far other things to fix about Monday Night Raw, but when it comes to just adult material, that's going to be the silver bullet that figures out any of their issues. It's just not going to be the case. It's just not going to be the case. Anyway, let's move on and let's talk about Roman Reigns. Of course, it was another episode of SmackDown last night, and Roman Reigns It's quite funny that we started off talking about Monday Night Raw and how bad it is. One of the best things right now in WWE, of course, is the Roman Reigns character and storylines that he's had with Jey Uso, Kevin Owens, etc. And we do have a bit of an update as to who's really behind the real driving force behind this Roman Reigns character. And it's a report that apparently, according to PW Insider and Ringside News, Paul Heyman is reportedly writing most of the promos that we have heard from WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns as of late. Heyman and Reigns, of course, have been working on screen together for a few months, but now Heyman is coming up with much of Reigns' promos, as I mentioned, according to PW Insider and Ringside News. Furthermore, WWE Hall of Famer Michael P.S. Hayes has also been very hands-on in Reigns' creative process as of late. It was noted that Hayes has been personally producing Reigns' big pay-per-view matches in recent months. Now, this would hardly come as no surprise that something that is doing very, very well on WWE TV and is critically acclaimed on WWE TV has Paul Heyman and Michael Hayes' fingerprints over it. They're very well respected and they do very, very good work. The irony being, as I mentioned, that we spoke about Monday Night Raw there and how bad it is and it's not must-see TV and that no one watches it and they want more edgy and more adult-orientated material, and then you've got Paul Heyman, the former executive director of Monday Night Raw, writing the promos for Roman Reigns that have been widely critically acclaimed, are edgy, are more skewed to an adult audience, and doing well on SmackDown. Wouldn't you know it? Wouldn't you know it? So it was a story that, to be honest, isn't super surprising when it comes to Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman, regardless of whenever he's involved when it comes to WWE, yes, he's not in a position of being an executive anymore, and he's not involved in the creative process, of course, for Monday Night Raw. Whatever he's involved in, though, he kind of has a deal with WWE, even if it's a handshake or just an understanding with Vince McMahon. Look, what I'm going to be involved in, I'm going to help out with creatively and produce and write. No one can really write a Paul Heyman promo for him, and no one can produce Paul Heyman apart from himself. It's always been the case. It's the same with Heyman and Brock Lesnar. It's the same now with Heyman and Roman Reigns. It's always been the case with Paul Heyman. And look, if Paul Heyman says backstage in WWE, I want to help out when it comes to writing a promo or help produce something, they're going to say yes because they want Paul Heyman to help out. Ultimately, the issue when it came to Paul Heyman and Monday Night Raw was the ratings were going down, and I think, as I said, if anything, Paul Heyman probably did the wise thing of getting out of there, and by all accounts, that departure was very amicable from that position, and he's still, of course, with the WWE, so I think he probably did the right thing. When it comes to Michael Hayes is still a producer in WWE, and I liken him to the same sense that when Michael Hayes does those big pay-per-view matches, he does do the big main events. It was the same with Arn Anderson and John Cena. That was the case when it came to those big matches, and I think Michael Hayes is the same now. I think now Arn Anderson, of course, is not with WWE. Michael Hayes was always very heavily involved, as mentioned, with Arn Anderson, I think, did the majority of John Cena matches, but Michael Hayes got involved in that as well. Michael Hayes was heavily involved in matches with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker and Triple H whenever they have them. So Michael Hayes has been a very senior producer in WWE for a long time, so it's no real surprise, quite frankly, to hear that he's so heavily involved in these great pay-per-view matches with Roman Reigns that we've seen. Since Roman Reigns' return, think of the matches that he's had that have just been spectacular. Both Jey Uso matches, the one at Clash of Champions and the one at Hell in a Cell. The Drew McIntyre match, I have no doubt in my mind that Sunday at TLC, the match between him and Roman and Kevin Owens, rather, is going to be absolutely spectacular, and I'm sure Michael Hayes will be producing that as well. So, interesting though, peek behind the curtain when it comes to that. Let's switch back to Monday Night Raw, and specifically Raw superstar Riddle, because as been reported that Riddle has, by all accounts, pretty much agreed new terms on a new WWE contract. WWE is reportedly working to sign Riddle to a new deal. Riddle's current contract expires in August of next year, according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. It was noted that Riddle has, quote, pretty much agreed to terms for a new 3-year contract at $400,000 guaranteed per year. Riddle would also make $50,000 for every show he works in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So those Saudi Arabia pay-per-views, if and when they return. I say if, when they return, because WWE signed like a 10-year deal for $1 bajillion. That's a number, by the way, that Saudi Arabia will pay for them to do those events. That's why they're so important to WWE. That's why WWE stock went up so much when they signed initially that deal, deal, but that's also why their stock started to decline because of that Saudi Arabia deal. Nevertheless, Matt Riddle is going to be compensated heavily for when he does perform at those events when they return, but it looks like the Riddle is going to be staying around for at least 3 more years. It was said that WWE Chairman and CEO Vince McMahon doesn't really understand Riddle's bro gimmick, but he loves the vignettes that Riddle features in, and he finds Riddle's vignettes to be hilarious. Now, we spoke about this before, so I don't really want to chew my food twice when it comes to Riddle and Vince McMahon's opinion on the original bro, but it's probably worth mentioning again that the idea that Vince McMahon doesn't understand Riddle, Matt Riddle, is hardly surprising. I think I said that way back when. I think there's probably videos here on the channel when we heard that Riddle was going to debut on SmackDown back in the summer that I said there is no way in my mind that Vince McMahon over the age of 70 and Bruce Pritchard in his late 50s understands even the smallest detail of Matt Riddle's personality, gimmick or character. Turns out he doesn't. The idea that Vince McMahon finds him funny is terrifying, and I think that could potentially be a massive problem, quite frankly, for Riddle going forward. Why? Because once Vince McMahon thinks you're funny, that's all he thinks you are, then Vince McMahon starts writing his own segments for Riddle. He'll start writing his own vignettes and backstage promos and all this kind of stuff, notes from VKM. He'll say that Riddle has to be funny, he has to be wacky all the time. It's the Dean Ambrose scenario all over again. Now, some people will say, well, Dean Ambrose, he did well in WWE, former WWE World Heavyweight Champion, yes. But if you look at the Jon Moxley interview with Chris Jericho when he left WWE, he said by the end of it, he was just furious. Everything had to be wacky. Everything had to have a prop. He wanted Dean Ambrose to be doing cartwheels and having a gas mask and having a big syringe and all this kind of stuff, and it just got so silly. Vince McMahon, when he has comedy in his mind, it's silly, it's goofy. The guy is an overgrown 70-year-old man-child, and if he thinks Riddle is funny, that is an issue because Riddle could be typecast for the future, and that could prevent him from really being elevated to that main event level. Why? Because Vince McMahon just sees him as funny. I wouldn't be surprised, give it a couple of months, we've got R-Truth from Riddle as a tag team or going after the 24/7 championship against each other. Why? Because he's funny, according to Vince McMahon. Let's move over to NXT because we have some interesting news when it comes to NXT, specifically a new show. Because Triple H, this is according to Wrestling Inc., it's an exclusive reported by them, that Paul Triple H Levesque has created a team to oversee a new NXT show, which would apparently be an NXT minor leagues system. Now, Gabe Sapolsky, former founder of Evolve and booker of Evolve, now owned by WWE, of course, and Gabe Sapolsky's been with WWE and NXT for quite a while, but Gabe Sapolsky is reportedly leading the team. Triple H has given him several agents and writers to get him more comfortable with writing television. Levesque is a big believer in Sapolsky, and this is said to be a case of Triple H giving him the ball. The idea is to create a show that would be the NXT for NXT. Now, the biggest challenge has said to be the format for the concept of TV. The original idea was for this to be akin to another promotion running in some kind of smaller tier markets that NXT serviced. However, with house shows unlikely to return, they're just making a TV series. Now, the goal was previously for it to launch in early 2021, but this has been delayed before and probably will be again due to the pandemic and a variety of other reasons. Now, this is very interesting. I think Gabe Sapolsky, once he joined WWE, many thought that eventually he would get in a position of booking. Maybe it came to NXT or another promotion within WWE. Of course, once WWE acquired Evolve and Gabe Sapolsky was fully integrated into WWE, it was a matter of time. I think there have been comments here on the channel before that said NXT, if it's going to be this full-fledged third brand, it's not going to be the minor leagues or developmental system in WWE anymore. You needed still to have that developmental territory. That would be an Evolve. Some people even said before, maybe they should just bring in Evolve, and then Evolve is the NXT for NXT. Looks like that's not going to be the case. Looks like it's going to be something different, and as the report mentioned, it's going to be NXT for NXT, and it's going to be a minor league system. It does make a lot of sense. To me, it does make a lot of sense because, as I mentioned, now that NXT is a full-fledged third brand, easy, that's tough to say, try to say that 3 times in a row, that you do still need that developmental territory. My only sort of response to that is that NXT, to me, doesn't feel like the main roster still. It is still treated like a developmental territory. It still is treated like something completely separate to Raw and SmackDown. Now, it's being something completely separate to Raw and SmackDown isn't a bad thing, but you can't tell me it's not treated like developmental because every time someone is called up to Raw or SmackDown, they are changed so much. Why? Because Vince McMahon doesn't like what they're doing in the minor leagues of NXT. So to say that NXT isn't developmental anymore, to me just isn't true. It just isn't true. But I'm not totally against the idea of having a minor league system for NXT. I think it's quite good. What I will say though, and it mentioned it at the end of the report, that this has been delayed before, so it's going to be delayed again, and I don't expect to see it at the start of 2021, probably at least halfway through the year or something like that. How many times have we heard these different reports of NXT territories popping up all over the place, whether that is now a minor league place in the USA, whether that was NXT India, which is reportedly going to debut at the start of 2021. We heard before about NXT Germany, NXT Canada, NXT Japan. We're yet to see any of them. We've heard lots of reports about them, but we're yet to see any of them. The only true NXT spin-off so far has been NXT UK, and that took a long time in the making. I think, when did we originally have the tournament? Was it 2018, 2017 or something like that when we had the first NXT UK tournament? So I think eventually we will get to that minor league system in NXT because they need it, quite frankly. But will we see it soon? I don't know. I don't know about that. And finally, let's go back to SmackDown and talk about Lars Sullivan, because Lars Sullivan, of course, has been absent once again from WWE television, and we might have an update as to why. Now, after being drafted to Friday Night SmackDown back in October, Lars Sullivan had 2 squash victories over Jeff Hardy and Chad Gable, followed by 2 sit-down interviews with Corey Graves in the weeks that followed. However, since the November 6th episode of Friday Night SmackDown on Fox, Sullivan has disappeared from WWE programming. Now, although WWE is yet to explain the reason and rationale for Sullivan's absence, Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter this week noted that since the top star on Friday Night SmackDown's Roman Reigns is a heel, WWE does not want, quote, another top heel they don't want to be on the same brand. That to me is a very loose rationale there. I don't know if that's legitimate or not. But since WWE intends to protect Sullivan as this unstoppable monster, it becomes challenging for them to have 2 top heels on the same brand, reported by Meltzer. Meltzer also made note that Sullivan was not in the names on the list included where big wrestlers, big men, Keith Lee, Otis, Dabba-Kato, Dio Madden and Omos were said to be undergoing further training sessions at the WWE Performance Center. So, I don't know. I really don't know when it comes to this story that they're keeping Lars Sullivan off of SmackDown because Roman Reigns is the top heel, and why would you have 2 top heels on the brand? I don't know about you. I never felt that Lars Sullivan was the top heel on the brand. That never came across to me. I felt that he was their attempt at doing another Braun Strowman. He was this attempt at doing this other big monster. But during these times, we have seen Braun Strowman. We saw his push. There was top heels on Monday Night Raw during that period of time. Kevin Owens, Chris Jericho. Even Triple H technically was a heel during that period of time. The idea that just because your champion is a top heel, that you can't have a top monster heel on the same brand, to me it just doesn't sit in logic there. I think in reality, look, every time Lars Sullivan appears on TV, some controversy happens, or the stuff he was doing was bad. That's the major issue there. Those 2 sit-down interviews he did with Corey Graves, I thought were terrible. They were terrible. They were laughable. The scripting was horrible, the promos was horrible, just everything about it was bad. And this is a guy that if he didn't have the backing of Vince McMahon, he would have been gone a long time ago. Now, the adult material stuff, I guess you can't even be mocked for that, to be honest, or we shouldn't be mocked for that anyway. He did nothing illegal or wrong there, that's by the by. I suppose the biggest issue there is he might not have told WWE about that. If that's the case, they have a right to be unhappy with that. They are a publicly traded PG company after all. But the stuff he did when it comes to the bodybuilding forum, which more and more, even to this day, comes out, I know he was fined and suspended and apologised for that. Nevertheless, people gave him an opportunity to show that he had improved and he had developed over the years. And then when he made his return, way back when in August, we then had that stuff come out about him harassing a woman on Instagram as well. And that was only a couple of weeks or months ago. So has he really improved? Has he really developed as a person? The evidence is there to say no. So every time he returns, there is controversy. Every time he steps on WWE TV, something else comes out. And quite frankly, everything he has done in recent months on WWE TV, obviously you've got the cloud of all of his controversies, but on top of that, it just hasn't been good. It's just not working. And I think a lot of people would say, cut your losses when it comes to Lars Sullivan, or send him back to NXT, do something different. But for whatever reason, Vince McMahon's got it in his head that this is the guy and he likes him. It's just a case of, I think he's going to keep pulling him off of TV until he thinks the controversy has died down and then put him back on TV. The issue is, every time he puts him back on TV, another controversy comes up. How many chances do you have to get? And when is enough? I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that one. It is very strange indeed. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the news stories we have spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling. Of course, TLC is Sunday. We will be doing a watch along for TLC on Sunday, so be sure to subscribe, bottom right hand corner. You'll be notified when we go live. So get involved with the community below. Drop a comment in there. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or in a second there'll be another video at the end of this video along with a subscribe button for you to click. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.